Hello, hello, and welcome to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Amanda, and my awesome co host is.
Hello, I'm Megan.
Hey, hey. So, we are your source for telling it like it is homeschool advice. Look, we love homeschooling and we love being with our kids. This isn't a podcast where we're going to show up and whine about it all day, but we do share a very real picture of what our days look like. Some are absolutely amazing, where we are making core memories galore. And others, well, they just can't end fast enough.
Definitely have those days where when my kids are like, what's wrong? I'm like, the day just needs to end. There's no salvaging this.
Mhm. I definitely
Just
have
needs
days where
to
I'm
end.
like, I'm just going to go back to bed. We'll try again tomorrow.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the thing, right? If you're considering homeschooling, you might be following some accounts on TikTok or Instagram. And these influencers have you thinking that every day is skipping through fields of daisies while your cherubs are linked arm in arm, or, that you sit around all day reading books, doing character voices and finger puppets that you've sewn by hand and all of that, right? And that might be part of your homeschool journey. It might be. And that's totally awesome. But it's definitely not a complete picture.
No. Yeah. So, look, the last thing we want is for you to feel like you're failing or doing it wrong when it turns out that that's not reality. Because, spoiler alert, it most likely isn't their reality either. We can't compare our real life with their highlight reel. We just can't.
Yeah, exactly. Not good for any of us. The other thing that you can expect from us is unapologetically secular and progressive views. We promise never to start an episode with a daily devotional. We are far more likely to tell you when the next protest defending democracy is, which, P.S., if you're listening to this in real time, will be June 14th, National Day of Protest called No King's Mass Protest, FYI.
Yes.
But what else do we do here? We believe in due process. Yes, even for people who may have broken the law, because that's kind of the whole point. We believe that women should have autonomy over their bodies. We believe in acknowledging our privilege when it's showing. We believe that young Black men should be able to walk down the street wearing a hoodie and arrive home safely. And so much more.
Yeah. Right. So much more. We believe Trump should sit down and be quiet about transgender athletes. He's like all up in social media because that's how he makes all of his important statements today on that
In all caps.
specifically. So, yeah. Yeah, gotta love it. So, listen, if all of that sounds like a place where your mind, body, heart, and soul wants to be, especially in a world where many homeschoolers are spouting off truly the exact opposite, welcome. We do exist, and we are happy that you found us. Now, with all of that out of the way, today we are going to be talking about how your homeschool approach might change depending on how many kids you have and what their ages are. Every family is unique, right? The makeup, the dynamics, the age differences. And as always, there's some nuance that might help make your homeschooling days more successful and enjoyable. But first, we like to kick off every episode with a weekly recap. It's part of our whole keeping it real effort. So, how's your week, Meagan?
I would classify it as busy, but good. We're getting a lot of stuff done. It's been super busy. We are in the US this week. We fly out Saturday to go see my husband, who we haven't seen in 6 months because he's been abroad working and we've been abroad world schooling. And so this week has just been a week of refilling prescriptions and mailing, like I was saying to Amanda the other day, like my daughter's best friend's birthday is in July and we won't be here. So I'm like, mail the present now and just put on the box. Do not open until July, whatever, And so it's like just getting all that stuff done. So it's been busy, but good. I think it's wonderful. I got to see a good friend the other night for dinner. Our pediatrician is a really good friend of mine. She was a really good friend of mine before she became our pediatrician. So we got to see her when we went for a prescription refill and, all that kind of stuff. So we're just kind of doing our thing, eating our favorite South Florida foods and all that. So it's been pretty good. How about you? What's up with you?
Nice. Well, so backtracking just a little, I will say I'm I'm of the age where I don't want so much stuff for gift giving occasions. And May is a huge gift giving occasion the whole month in our family, right? We've got our wedding anniversary and then Mother's Day and my birthday. And there's just a lot of stuff. And everyone is always, what do you want? What do you want? And like, I just don't want a lot of stuff. And so for Mother's Day this year, I had asked for my family to accompany me shopping for a new purse. I did not want them to buy the purse. I just wanted them to promise to come with me and provide pleasant conversation with absolutely no complaining for the afternoon while I went through the outlet mall looking at all of my options and decided on a purse. I'm not sure if this is a normal thing. I'm not sure if this is what falls under that whole boy mom movement that's all over social media right now. But I cashed it in this past weekend. I had a great time. But the outlet mall totally kicks my ass now that I have, like, pretty bad long COVID. So there was that. And then we're kind of, like, heading into a busy time again. So we're leaving tomorrow for Palm Springs to celebrate my birthday, which is fun, right? Total first world problem, but we have that going on, and so trying to plan for that. And then as soon as we get back, we have a birthday party and a going away party on the same day. And then we have 2 days of regular school stuff. And then my parents are flying in because my kiddo has like a graduation. Well, not a graduation, but one of those promotion things that they do. And so my folks always go to all of those sorts of school related things for my other nephews that live in the same neighborhood they do. So they wanted to make a point to come for this one since we don't do those kinds of things very often, given the whole, homeschool thing. It's not like he's getting like a monthly award or XYZ, which again, it'll be great. It's just a lot of things going on. And so I
Mhm.
had this great idea that I was going to do like a bunch of meal prep stuff. Does anyone listening do meal prep stuff? Like, it's good and bad, right? So I did amazing and I got like 5 meals made. Now I don't talk about it much, but we do have a few small food issues in our home. And most of it can be gotten around by chopping and dicing things very, very small. So it just takes hours to dice all of those vegetables very, very small. So we spent hours cooking and I did. I got like 5 meals made in the freezer. And so we're ready, right? For like whatever's happening. If I need to be able to just pull out a quick meal, they're good, they're healthy. It's going to help a lot with what we have going on. But now I can't hardly use one of my hands because that's part of like my health thing. And I was extra tired. Megan messaged me last night, wanted my help with something. And I didn't see it. I wasn't available because I was like taking a shower and falling. I like fell in the shower. And like I'm
Oh,
officially
no.
that person who's old enough to fall in the shower. And like now I'm all messed up and taking extra muscle relaxers for it. And it's just a whole thing, right? And so when you have all of those things going on, and then you're supposed to be like your best self homeschooling, and the kids like, we need to do Michael Clay Thompson and poetry and step up to writing, and I need you to help me with world history. And I'm like, okay, great. So yeah, I'm here. We're here, and it'll be
I'm
fine.
either impressed that you went to an outlet mall on a Saturday or a weekend, or like thinking, what were you doing? Right. So we went to the
Me too.
mall. Yeah, right. I generally have a no shopping on the weekends rule. It's like
Mhm.
people who work Monday through Friday do that and that they don't have a choice, but I don't have to submit myself to that insanity. So generally speaking, I mean, we haven't been to Target since the whole boycott Target thing happened, but like last year when we were still living in the States, like I would never go to Target on the weekend for no amount of money. Could you pay me to go to Target on the weekend? And so over the weekend, we happened to be right near Dadeland Mall in Miami. And my daughter's been looking for a new pair of jeans because she and I both had a pair of jeans that we just loved, loved, loved. And because our thighs touch, because we're not stick figures, the thigh part like had rubbed on both of our pants, like within a week of one another. We had both been like, oh, these are dead. She tried fixing hers and she tailored them and whatever. But then when she did that, the pockets ended up being like so far down low that like it looked ridiculous and whatever. So we were like, okay, these aren't going to work anymore. And so we were near them all over the weekend and she wanted to go to like Hollister and American Eagle and stuff like that and try on some pants. And she got some really cute pants. But holy cow, the mall, I was
Yeah.
like, and we're not big like mall goers to begin with. It
Mhm.
was, by the time we left, I wanted a nap. It was a lot. I was like, oh, this is why we don't do this on weekends. So I'm
Yeah.
impressed that
No,
you went
that's it.
there.
It is. It's crazy, and it was also a holiday weekend, which
Yes.
I'll totally put that out. I did not think about that before we went. The unfortunate reality for me is if I want to do, or even if I need to do some kind of a big shopping trip, I can't drive there, do the shopping trip, and
Right.
drive myself home. So a lot of it is dependent around my husband's schedule, and he's been very busy lately. So it made sense to do it on the weekend.
Mhm.
And because it was an out, yeah, I mean, it just all kind of came together, and it was fine, right? Like all in, it was fine, and no one complained. They did very well. So we had a nice time. Probably only to be repeated the next time I request that as my gift, but it is what it is.
At least it worked. It's inspiring to do it again then.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So let's go ahead and get into it. We are talking about how to approach homeschooling depending on the number of kiddos you're homeschooling and how old they are, right? Oftentimes, people know that they want to homeschool and they may have an idea of how they want to homeschool, but visualizing the day to day, or sometimes even taking the jump into just even doing it to start trying to visualize the day to day and then try to squeeze in everything without losing your mind, it can be a bit fuzzy. So, hopefully, we're going to help bring it into focus.
Mhm. So we're kicking off our discussion today with homeschooling only children. And that might seem like an odd place for me to kick off because I have 3 children. And you're like, Amanda has an only child. Why is she not kicking off this discussion? Because I am an adult only. So I totally get the life of the only. And so Amanda's going to have tons of awesome advice on this because she is actually homeschooling and only. The only thing I would love to say is the number of times that I see Facebook posts about homeschooling and only, and they're always just this most desperate state of like, how will my child ever amount to anything? They're already an only. And if I homeschool them, they'll never know how to interact with another human being ever again. We're not that desperate and sad and lonely. But like, it's okay. I mean, we do need to get out. We do need to see other human beings because there isn't that built-in sibling dynamic. But, it's not as drastic and terrible of a situation as I think people imagine it to be. My best friend has a miracle baby who's an only. And it was so funny because I had my third at the same time she had her miracle baby. And, we'd be talking about milestones of those 2 that were the same age and all that, and she'd be like, paraphrasing, but it would be along the lines of like, she's going to be, you know, odd and this and that and all these things because she's an only child. And I was like, I'm an only child. You're my best friend. I'm like, I'm not those things, am I? And she was like, no. I go, your kid's going to be fine. And I think it's just that thing, like societally, onlys are always kind of painted in this light for some reason. And it's like, I think you could probably speak to it better, but there's probably questions like as a parent, like, why do you only have the one? Like there's something wrong that you didn't have more than one. Like, did you choose this? Because who would choose this? It's kind of this conversation around onlys. And I think it affects the parents of onlys, especially if only wasn't your vision for your life, which I completely understand. It was not the vision for my mom's life. So these things happen, but we're not a mess. We're going to be okay. We're all good. 44 years old, still good. So your only is going to be amazing. And Amanda will tell you how she does it day to day, but it's going to be okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is exactly the first thing that I wanted to address. I feel like we can't jump into a conversation about homeschooling an only child without tackling the elephant in the room. And that is the fact that you see it in groups. I'm in Facebook groups that are specifically for parenting an only child and also homeschooling an only child because there are groups for that specifically. And if you're not in those groups, you should totally go look. It's a mixed bag for sure. But the reality is, those groups are full of people who did not plan on this lifestyle, did not plan to have an only. I'm also one of those people. It was never my plan. I always thought I'd have a big family. Absolutely love having an only. Just in prepping for this episode, I sat down with my kiddo and I said, do you ever wish you had a brother or sister? And he was like, no. Why would I? Like, that sounds like a horrible idea. Like, okay, just touching base. It's like Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's okay that you have not ruined your child's life by making them an only. And the further you get into that, I think a lot of people let that go or they realize it's okay, right? First, there's absolutely no guarantee that your kids are actually going to like each other and play together or get along as adults. And I think people oftentimes forget that when they're so hung up on like, oh, my only doesn't have a built-in best friend. Like I know plenty of people who have siblings who are not best friends. So there's that. And then even if they do mostly get along, a lot of times there's one child who gets stuck doing pretty much like all of the family managing and dealing with all of the things, right? Like this idea of like, oh, well, when my parents get older, if I had multiple children, they'd all pitch in equally to care for us, or like that doesn't usually happen. Okay. I don't know very many families where that's going smoothly with the older parents. So just, put those things, those are not reality. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Okay. So, second, if you want to rely on a study from 1896, only children are awful. They are jealous. They're selfish. They're aggressive. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. If you are actually interested in current scientific research, it shows that only children have many of the same characteristics of the oldest child in a family with many siblings, but also only children tend to be more empathetic. They tend to have more flexible creative thinking. They tend to have better mental health. Now, you can't ignore the fact that only children often carry a lot of parental expectation. So maybe in those early days, or depending on how you're doing it as a parent, there's a little bit of give and take there, but generally better mental health. And they're better at talking to and dealing with adults. Okay. So we have talked about this. We will continue to talk about it. I'll talk about it more in a little bit, but that's not a bad thing. Okay. Just tuck that away. That's not a bad thing. Now, getting into the actual nuts and bolts of the reality of homeschooling and only, you do have to be a bit more proactive about scheduling play dates, finding progressive co ops or park meetups, and that sort of thing. Kids do often want and need interaction with other kids to be able to play and get rough and tumble every once in a while, or even just talk about whatever their most current interest is. And you don't just have that in your own home, especially if you don't have family around. We did not have any family around. And so we spent a lot of time just going to the park. At least once or twice a week, we just roll up to the park and be like, here are people your same age. Go, good luck. And he'd be like, come play with me. And I'd be like, you get to play with me at home all of the time. Go, introduce yourself. Good luck. You know? That might not work for your kid, but for a lot of kids, especially a lot of onlys, this ability to just kind of roll up and start a game or be like, hey, you like fire trucks? Me too. Let's go down the slide. Like, I don't fully understand how it works, but it works.
He pulled it off.
Right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I have seen firsthand it can totally work. I have also found that my only really appreciates online classes and clubs. So sometimes it's a novel study or something like that where there's interaction and they're talking about things, a book they particularly liked. Casual clubs like a chess group where they're just getting together and they're playing, like 15-minute games on live chess or something like that. Anything where there's a bit of interaction, but it's not forced friendship. That really fits well for my only. And I know a lot of other onlys who are enjoying those same kinds of things. So I think it's worth looking at. Now, not all classes and not all clubs are going to be a good fit. We have tried many that we gave it the good college try, showed up 3 or 4 times, and he was like, please don't make me do that again. Like, okay, that's fine. Just not a good fit. Something that works great for a while will surely stop working suddenly, all of the sudden. For years, he was insistent that he needed to attend this Friday morning lecture series where there was a different person who talked about a different topic, a different subject expert every Friday morning. And it was such a pain to make sure that we were available for it and that he was up for it. But he had to attend. He loved it. And then this year, I was like moving all these things around and trying to make sure. And I didn't sign him up for one class that I really wanted him to be in so that it didn't interfere with this Friday morning thing. And he went to like two and then like started having all of these random excuses for why he couldn't go. And it became pretty obvious that he was just done with it, right? Like just over and done. I hope, okay, well, I wish I had known that at the start of the quarter when I was signing up for everything, but like, that's fine. We'll find new outlets like that. Like, it just is what it is. Right. So, going back to what I said earlier, don't worry about the ages. Only children, especially, but homeschool children in general, are going to be able to talk to kids and adults. They're going to be able to interact with a wide range of people. We've talked about this before in the podcast in general, but it's this thing called vertical socialization versus horizontal socialization. So, vertical is the idea that you can talk to all ages, up and down, from young to old. And horizontal is the idea that you're really comfortable only with same age peers. And there is so, so much to be said. The research is there. We've talked about it before, but vertical socialization really is superior. So I think this comes up especially if you are using programs like maybe your local library. I know for us, my kiddo really enjoyed Spanish story time. And there was practice with Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. I'm terrible at foreign languages, and Spanish wasn't the one that I learned. So that combination means when he picked Spanish, I was a little like, okay, we'll see how that goes. He did not want to learn French, which is I'm marginally better. So we go to Spanish story time, but the reality is he's quite a bit older than Spanish story time kiddos are, but he enjoyed hanging out. He's good with the little kids. The older person, the librarian who does it, absolutely loved talking to him and engaging him. And afterwards, she'd always make a point of having a little conversation with him that she couldn't with the little kids. And then after that, we could go over to the other section of the library and he could sit down with all the old grandpas and talk about model trains or World War II airplanes. Or we can join the Thursday afternoon chess play, open chess play, which is, a bunch of business people and retirees. And just this ability to transition across the way. You do see it with all ages of homeschool kids, but I think it's really, really prevalent with an only because this is where they're getting their social interaction. Embrace it. I just embrace it. It is so good for them when they are ready to leave your home and go out into the real world. And suddenly they have younger colleagues and they have older bosses. And it's just so like embrace this vertical socialization from day one.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, we talk about the fact that school is kind of this gold standard for socialization. And really, there's no environment in the real world that mimics the school classroom. And yet somehow that's become the way that kids learn how to socialize. And I'm like, when my kids, in the very short period of time that my kids went to school, they were in the school that was at the end of our block. It was a very thin slice of pie as far as the socioeconomics of our area. It was not very well diverse at all. It wasn't very well diversified culturally either. By far and away, the majority of the kids in the school were Spanish speakers at home. It was predominantly a Hispanic school. And then the ones who weren't Hispanic were white Americans. That's not diverse. That is not representative of the real world. The socioeconomics were not representative of the real world. Geographically, it was so narrow. You didn't have people from all around our area. So it's not that thing. And so I think when we talk about our kids socializing and you're talking about all these amazing things, and it's like, it's being weighed up against that system as like us trying to hopefully do as good of a job in socializing our kids. I'm like, that's not a good job. That's
Yeah.
That's not it, right? What you're talking about is 10,000 times better for any kid, any human being than what the school system is offering. It is a line of societal crap that we have been sold that school is where kids learn to socialize. They go from task to task all day long. They have minutes to wolf their lunch down. If they're lucky, they get 20 minutes on the playground. Half the time that's taken away because one or a couple of kids are misbehaving. They are just herded like cattle from one thing to the next all day long. They are not having this glorious social time like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood over there. It's not happening. So what you're describing is 10 million times better anyway.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm not sure that any kid at the library is told, we're not here to socialize.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
okay, so another thing with an only that you have is yes, you do have to buy curriculum for your only child if you're using curriculum or resources, right? You're not easily able to just kind of use what a big brother or big sister had, or it's not like, oh well, this is expensive, but it's fine because we've got 3 more kids to use it. So once you average it out, it's not so bad, right? But the perk of that is that you have just loads of flexibility to tweak and change as needed. And yes, we always have that. But if you've only got one kid and this math curriculum isn't working for them, you're not thinking, oh, but the 3 other kids are using dimensions. And now I got to figure out how to use this other one to teach one kid this while the other 3 of the, you're just like, oh, it's not working. Let's see what does work. You can just tweak so much, so easily. And if cost is an issue, because again, you're not able to average it out across all of your kids, secondhand is wonderful. You might be able to do giveaways and resource swap days and things like that. I know in my area, even though it is much more progressive, a lot of the things at those swap days are very religious and conservative and materials that I'm just not picking up. But I buy a lot of things on eBay or specific groups. Like there's a Michael Clay Thompson Facebook group where all they do is sell curriculum at like half the price that you would pay for new curriculum. It is 100% possible to do it at a discount. Please do. Like
Mhm.
it gets expensive, especially with only one. And I think the other thing too that I see a lot in groups and people forget, especially when you have an only, is that it isn't a bad thing for kids to be bored. Again, this is supported by research. All you have to do is go to Google and type in, what are the benefits of a kid being bored? Or what's the benefit for being bored in general? And you'll see stuff for adults and kids. But this ability for a kid to just be bored for a little while, first off, it does all of these amazing things in your brain and it encourages you to slow down. And then it gives your brain the time to actually get creative. But beyond that, there's there's a life skill there in in thinking, I'm really bored. And then figuring out what you're going to do that isn't just turning to mindless screen time. I'm not saying that mindless screen time is a bad thing. I absolutely use mindless screen time sometimes. But being able to help teach your only, hey, first off, it's okay to be bored. And second off, when you notice that, sit around, think for a little while, and then why don't you brainstorm? Like let's practice figuring out how to do something else, how to transition into something else. This is just a life skill. I challenge you to show me an adult who hasn't at some point thought, I'm bored. What should I do today? Right? Like, it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Boredom is where creativity and genius are born. It is essential. And when all we're doing is rushing from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, there's no time for your brain to ever even go to those places.
Hmm. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that is not just us talking, right? I promise that is backed by research. Go
Hmm.
look it up. I promise it is okay for your kid, whether it's an only or they've got a whole bushel load of siblings that they just don't want to hang out with. It's okay for them to be bored or for
Hmm.
the entire bushel load to be bored, just as long as you're keeping an eye on them to make sure they don't do anything too bad once they figure out how to not be bored.
Did I ever tell you about the time that a croc got stuck in the treadmill at our house during a boredom period?
Oh,
I come home and my oldest was like, I'm going to need your help lifting up the front of the treadmill because that's where the motor was and it was really heavy. And he's like, I need to lift it up because I have to get something out of the inside. I'm like, what are you getting out of the inside of the treadmill?
yeah.
And his croc was in the treadmill motor. I'm like, how did this even happen? And so we had a 3-car garage and the treadmill was on one of the side walls, right? So like if you were to have pulled a car in, it would have been like where the door opened out against, right? So not
Okay.
where the front bumper goes, but where you would open like the driver's door to get out of the car. And so the treadmill was facing that way. And so he and my youngest kid decided that they were going to put the Crocs on the treadmill,
Okay.
crank the treadmill up to 12 miles an hour or whatever the fastest speed was, so that the Crocs would fly back and hit the wall behind it and then projectile across the garage to see how far they would go. Except it went so fast that the Croc went under when the belt went under and it got sucked into the motor. I was like, I couldn't even be upset with them because honestly, it was a valid experiment. Nothing was
Yeah.
broken. Nobody was hurt. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can help you get the croc out of the treadmill. I mean, it was valid scientific research.
It was. I wonder if they had used something without a rubber sole, if it would have worked.
Exactly. I wouldn't put it past them to try something like that again. So yeah, it was a memorable day. That's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah,
But
I
yeah,
mean, you just might want to make sure that they don't try to explode anything or, but boredom is generally good. And for the most part,
yeah, it was all good. The croc survived. The treadmill survived. The kids are in one piece. I'm like, yeah, we're good.
yep, there you go. Some days that's all you can really count on.
Exactly. All right. So we want to talk now about homeschooling more than one child and how that might look depending on their ages and your homeschooling style and things like that. But before we do, we just wanted to remind you that we offer either one-on-one coaching with either of us or two-on-one coaching with both of us. Twice the fun. We have a link in our show notes. You can always DM us. You can go to our website, Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. But we have an online calendar system. You can grab a time slot that works well for you. We'll ask you ahead of time what you want to work on during the session so we can maximize every single solitary minute. So if you want to talk about scheduling, if you want to talk about curriculum, transcripts, world schooling, where on earth to start with homeschooling, I mean, truly whatever, come hang out with us. We are more than happy to help. Those sessions are so much fun. We both leave super jazzed up after our coaching sessions. And yeah, and we get great feedback from parents who've done them who are like, yes, like I've listened to all the podcast episodes and I've read a bunch of books and I follow a bunch of influencers and I read blogs and all this stuff. But sometimes it's nice to just go, my child is 10 and this is how they learn. And I'm not sure what to do. And to have that very, very specific conversation. So come book a session. We would love to help and really get into the nitty gritty of your specific homeschool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We had one recently where the mom totally had a wonderful plan. And she was like, I just want to go over this plan with you. And I want you to tell me if I'm on the right track or if I've totally lost the plot. And she was on the right track. Had a great plan. And then the ability to not only encourage her in that way, but kind of like lift her up and cheer her on and be like, you have a great plan and you're doing great, like it's so great. It's really,
That peace of mind is worth
yeah,
a fortune when
it
you're
feels good for everyone, right?
Yes.
We get to cheer someone on and they get to leave feeling like, oh, I do got this. Great.
I'm not completely messing this up. This is great. Yeah, for sure. All right. So let's talk about homeschooling multiple kids, but when they're close in age. Okay. So we'll start with littles and then we'll talk about if you have teens or middle schoolers who are close in age, but where you've got multiples. So in the world of littles, it's not going to surprise you that I'm going to talk first about unit studies and project based learning. Amanda's like, oh my gosh, she's again on the unit studies and project based learning. But it's just such an awesome way, even if you don't do it for the entirety of your homeschool life, even if you're still doing like math and ELA and for each one, and that's your jam. But having something that you can do as a group where you can learn about different types of rocks or different types of clouds or whatever the case might be. Maybe it's we're going to do one country every month or one state every month and go through the 50 states, and you're doing that component together. Being able to do that when they're close in age, it's amazing. It really does help with them working as a group and feeding off one another. And I think in many cases, it'll help with sibling bonds and things like that as well. But it also saves you the time of having to do an entire education from A to Z distinctly with each individual child. And there's nothing wrong with them combining and doing that, which is a pretty great option. So yeah, love a good unit study or project based. And that's one of the things that we coach on too, by the way. So come chat with us if you're looking for like, okay, that sounds great, but how? Right? How? What am I doing? I'm gonna need
Yeah.
more than this is great.
Yeah. Yeah, we're happy to help out with that. Another thing you can think about is if you want to go the route of curriculum, and now we have talked before, please don't pick up curriculum for kindergarten. Definitely don't pick up curriculum for preschool. I see that a lot in the groups. But if you've got younger elementary age kiddos, and you're wanting to do this, you can use curriculum and you can sometimes use the same curriculum, almost like a unit study sort of thing, depending on how close in age they are and what you're doing and when you're starting. Sometimes it's that thing where your first grader is ready for curriculum and your kindergartner absolutely has to do what your first grader is doing. We're not going to tell you that you cannot allow them to learn. It's not like, well, they're in kindergarten. You tell them to go sit in the corner while you teach your other. It's not like that, right? So sometimes you can use the same thing. Sometimes you need to use different things. And sometimes you use the same thing, but over a couple of year time span. And this will also apply if you've got kids with a wider age range, but especially if they're close together and they like the curriculum, but you think, they're not going to get quite as much out of it as I would like them to. So we're probably going to reuse it again next year. Don't forget to make photocopies of the pages your kid's going to fill out. I don't know how many times I have started working on something and then been like, I should have just made a copy of that instead of having him fill out that page in the workbook because now I got to go through and try to erase that page so we can do it again. It's such a pain. I'm telling you right now, if there's any chance at all that you're going to use this again with your other kiddo or that you think you're going to revisit it, just take a few minutes and make some photocopies of the pages that you're going to write on or that you're going to fill out. And that way you can reuse the curriculum, whether it's 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, or again, if you're in that situation where your kindergartner is just popping in for the day and saying, I really want to do this thing, make a photocopy of it, give it to them. Maybe they just color on it. Maybe they actually fill it out. Who cares? But they feel awesome because they got to join Big Brother or Big Sister. And that's totally fine.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that you can do when you have close in age kiddos, and this goes for littles and bigger kids too, right, is the ability to group subjects wherever possible. Things like history. I mean, if you're talking about the civil rights movement or you're talking about women's suffrage, you don't need to sit there and go, well, that's a second grade topic and you're in third grade. History is history. Lump it all
Yeah.
together. I mean, these subjects are best when taught through conversation and exploration and novel studies and documentaries and all that stuff. Anyway, do it as a family, do it all together. That's the case for history, social studies, civics, health topics. Even a lot of science when they're little can totally be done as a group, hands on, around the kitchen table or on a picnic blanket outside and grouping that together. And it just makes life so much easier because you can specify the subjects that need to be specified if that's the route you'd like to go and group together the ones that do not need to be necessarily.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There are so many things. And all of those topics, they do not have to be like, well, first you have to learn this and then you have to learn that and then you have to learn that. If you are working with more than one kiddo and there's a general consensus they want to learn this thing, then learn this thing now. If you want to go back and forth and like the bigger one gets to pick this month and the littler one gets to pick next month, that's okay too, right? Like you can bounce around and just cover the topics. It doesn't have to be you're not in public school. Even if you're like me and you're looking at the state standards and trying to make sure that you hit everything, you don't have to do it in the same order. There's absolutely nothing that says you have to do it even at grade level. For me, I'm going to look at it and be like, oh, well, we're not really going to cover that this year, but I'm planning to cover it next year, or we already talked about that last year. So at least I know we got it. Standards are just things that are like, oh, do I want my kid to know this? Yes. Do I want them to learn it this year? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they already learned it. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. We talk a lot about how I'm kind of anal about those things, but at the end of the day, like knowing it and being real concerned about exactly when it happens are not the same thing.
Hmm.
Now, if you're looking at bigger kids, but they're still close in age, things might change a little. I'm still going to really recommend this idea of if you're using curriculum, make photocopies of the pages so that you can reuse it whenever possible. Keep in mind that just because they're close in age doesn't mean they're necessarily going to like the same curriculum or the same style. So when you can use the same thing, awesome. If you can't, resell it. eBay works for you just the same as it does a parent who's got an only child. But one of the things that I think we want to be really careful about when you have older kids that are close in age is to make sure that you don't accidentally, it's always going to be accidentally, fall into the trap of forcing your kids to do all of the same things, especially if you've got one kid that's of driving age. This idea of, well, he can drive and he's going to this, or he can drive, but his brother is doing this thing. Like, guess what? You're doing this thing too. Like, I signed you both up for the same class and you're going to drive to it. Sometimes that's going to work great, but just try to remember they are two different people and they will probably want to do two different things from time to time, even when it causes more work, even when you're like, oh, come on, don't you want to, like, can't you just take the same class this quarter? I'm really overwhelmed, balance, balance.
Hmm. So true. The other thing to factor in at this point is that I think a lot of people by the middle school years, the teen years, the high school years, the college prep times are outsourcing a lot more. I don't think there's a ton of parents who are doing chemistry labs, and there are some, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
there's plenty of people who are outsourcing high level biology, chemistry, statistics, calculus. That stuff is being outsourced. It's on Mr. D's, it's on Outschool, it's on AP Homeschoolers, it's being pushed out to all these other places. So when you have kids that are close in age, but they're older, they can be doing different stuff, like Amanda's saying, because you're not the one doing it. You're not sitting there going into hardcore biology and then going hardcore into chemistry and then going hardcore into physics all in one day. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have to be an expert in all these things. Number one, no one has to be an expert in all those things. There are experts out there and you can pay them to teach your kids those things, okay? Which
Yep.
many of us do by that level. And the other thing is it frees you up to become more of a project manager than a teacher. And so you're managing schedules, you're looking for resources, you're maybe coordinating with teachers for support that your kiddo might need beyond what they're able to communicate themselves. Maybe they've asked you to step in for something. So that frees up your time a little bit when they get to that stage because you're not doing as much direct instruction a lot of times by that point. Some people are doing it all the way through, and that's awesome. Good for you. But a lot of people are not. So if you're outsourcing like mad, continue to do so. And you just need to make sure that they're staying on top of their assignments, that their schedules are up to date, finding those resources year after year and making sure that they're continuing to be challenged and learning what they need to know, want to know, all of the above. And so it's a very different role by that point.
Yeah, I can totally see that. A lot more collaboration, but yeah, kind of that, like you said, project manager almost.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very different role, right? I'm kind of in that stage and it's a lot of like, you need this, you need that. Okay, right? You're juggling and you're keeping all these things in the air and making sure everybody has what they need. So it works.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about homeschooling multiple kids who are not close in age. This is our final category for the day. We do see this a lot. It's like, I'm trying to do language arts with my middle schoolers. They're trying to write a 5-paragraph essay. And I have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old that's just constantly interrupting, that wants to be involved, but isn't ready to be involved. All of the above. So one of the suggestions that works really well is to keep kind of a toolbox of quiet, self-directed things that your younger kiddos can do while you're working with older kids. It might be puzzles, it might be audiobooks, it could be Lego challenges, sensory bins. It might be one of those craft kits where you're sewing 2 pieces of felt together with a tapestry needle that's not sharp and won't hurt anyone, but it's great for motor skills and it's great for creativity. So there's tons of things that can be done. And you're probably going to have multiple bins and rotate them because it gets old quickly. And when you put something out that's fresh and new, the attention stays longer.
Yeah, definitely. Those are all great ideas. And if you have a kiddo who likes Legos or Duplos, do not underestimate Pinterest. You can find so many pictures of little Duplo creatures or characters or flowers or things like that. You can print those off and keep them with the Duplos and pull out different ones and have them build different things and create different stuff. And again, have different ones that come out each week so that it's new and fun and exciting. Like, so easy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the next one, I'm going to be honest. I'm the oldest of three. I was 100% cooking for myself and my siblings at a much younger age than my baby brother was. In fact, he's in his mid 30s at this point. I'm still not positive he cooks for himself all that much. Okay. So if this is your situation where you have this wide age range and you're homeschooling, but if you're listening and you're not homeschooling, this is still so important. Really, really, really take the time to scaffold and build age appropriate independence at each level so that when they get there, they already feel like they can do these things. Siblings often help each other, which is amazing. I don't think any of us are going to be like, "Oh, what are you doing with your kids? They help each other." Like, don't let them do that. That's not what we're going for. But at the same time, you do want to be really careful that you don't end up with this situation where the oldest does all of the cooking and the younger ones don't know how to cook, or the oldest does all of the library trips and the other ones don't know how to go pick up their library holds. And so, really being intentional about scaffolding all of the things that they are going to do at home, that they need to work on executive functioning skills to be able to do their schoolwork, the life skills, just all of those things. It's going to be so important to successfully homeschooling this wide range of ages. So much more than if they're really close together and you're kind of teaching them the same steps along the way. And you don't forget. The reality is if there's a big gap, it's kind of like, oh, they figured that out, right? Like, well, actually you taught the first one. You kind of taught the second one. You you basically forgot to teach the third and the fourth ones, Careful of
Yeah, the
that.
expectation is that they'll just roll into it and do it. And then
Yeah.
when that doesn't happen, there's frustration on both ends and all that
Mhm.
stuff. So, yeah, good point. All right. The sentiments that we shared earlier about unit studies and project based learning, I'm not done talking about them, Amanda. Same with combined subjects. That all echoes over here as well. The
That's
difference
true.
will be, right? So before we talked about it when you had kids that were close in age. And so we're saying, okay, fine, you're covering the civil rights movement. You can most likely use almost all the same materials and activities with a group of kids that are first grade, second grade, and fourth grade. You might have to tweak just a little bit, but generally speaking, those materials are going to apply universally to those ages. If you have a broader age gap, you can still do that. But what you'll likely end up doing is covering the meat of the topic with the group. And that might be through read alouds or through documentaries, but then splinter off to some of the activities, the reading assignments, the projects, the writing, whatever that might be, and give each age group or individual age work that is uniquely appropriate to their level. There'll be a common thread amongst all the kids because they're all working on the same topic. You can have some great discussion about those topics, but each one is kind of working at their own level. If you've ever worked with any of our unit studies that we put out, that's how they're designed. So, for example, page 1 is almost always book and video resources, and they are ranked in order of youngest to oldest. And it's not even broken out into ages or grades or anything like that. It's just a sliding scale of here's where it starts, here's the youngest category, and here's where it gets a little bit more mature. And so you can take that reading list if you have a second grader, a fifth grader, and a 10th grader, take that reading list and just pull from the top, the middle, and the bottom, and everybody gets a book out of the same project-based unit study. There will be writing assignments there and it'll talk about here's how a younger person could complete this or a person who doesn't have as strong a foundation in writing. And here's how an older learner would be able to do this. So they're still working on the same thing. It's all still there. The roadmap is there for you, but you're just tweaking how you're applying it and which components you're giving to which learners. So, and then some of them will universally apply. There's usually cooking or art or STEM or something in there as well that's hands on. And oftentimes those will apply universally across the board. So that's how unit studies work really, really well. If you've not worked with a unit study before, our unit studies have in them a link to a video that's kind of just like a short episode of Amanda and I saying, here's how we'd use a unit study. Here's a tip. If you've never used a unit study before, this is how you can apply them in your homeschool. And there's a variety of ways you can apply them in your homeschool. And that's included with every one of our unit studies. So if it's not something you've tried before, or maybe you did and it didn't go well, you can tweak it. It's salvageable. And so unit studies, project-based learning, combining subjects all still work great when you have a variety of ages. You're just going to apply it a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember that a lot of subjects, obviously, it's not going to be that way with math, but things like history and science, they cover the same things in elementary school, middle school, and high school. It's just the depth to which they go into those things. So there's really no reason that some of these areas you can't do exactly this. You're just keeping it more lighthearted and exploratory for your youngest kiddos. It's getting a little bit more in depth if you've got a kind of middle ages kid, a middle grader kid, and then your high schooler's going to need to do something a bit more in depth with it. But all of these subjects, you cover American history and world history as an elementary school kid, and you don't remember most of it. And then you do it again a bit in middle school. And then in high school, you do it again, and they want you to actually really remember the stuff and be able to apply it and do things. Science is the same. You learned about biology and earth science and rocks in elementary school. And then in middle school, you did a bit more with it. And now in high school, you're actually really supposed to know the shit. Like, you can use this across the board. It's totally fine.
Mhm.
I think the last point that we want to make, okay, neither Megan nor I is a fan of entirely online curriculum. You will never hear us say, you should totally sign up for K to 12. It's the best way to homeschool. Like, we've talked about it many times on the episode. If that's the route you have to go for a bunch of reasons outside of your control, like, we get that. But it's not generally the best way to go if you can avoid it. But having a couple of online classes or subjects that are kind of always done with an online teacher, that specific format, per kid, if you can swing it, really frees up your time to be working with the others. The reality is, if you're working with a wide range of ages, it's going to be really hard to be working with all 3 or 4 or 5 of those kids all at the same time every day. You are very likely going to burn yourself out. So if you can find a way to outsource some of that, maybe your littlest has circle time online, maybe your oldest has pre-calculus online. And during those class times, you can take the time to do the things where you can sort of do the younger and the middle school age together on this thing, or you can really go in depth on some critical thinking activities with your high schooler while your other two are participating in an arts and crafts club online or something like that. These kinds of things can absolutely save your sanity if you can find a way to swing it. And there are lots of options. There are free options. There are affordable options. There are more expensive options. Those are things we're happy to help you with if you need help, because you're like, I need that. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to get there, but I need it. Like, we're happy to help be a resource. So reach out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'd be lost without online resources in my household. So yeah. 100%.
Yep. All right. We're almost done. That about wraps us up. We do have a mantra, so make sure you stick around for that. Just a reminder, we talked about the unit study. We have unit studies. We do the unit studies. We sell them on Teachers Pay Teachers, which is a great website. If you haven't already checked it out, you 100% should. We have a free resource over there so you can see how you like it. And then we have a bunch of other paid resources. The link will be in the show notes. You can find it from our website. There are lots of places, or you can just type in Teachers Pay Teachers and Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. We should be pretty easy to find. We're also going to have them on our Patreon page. So you can come join and buy a unit study. And, they've got that whole two birds, one stone thing. Go for it. I'm all about working smarter, not harder. So you could totally do that if you would like. But we would love the support, and we think they're awesome. So I'm pretty sure you will too.
Yeah, they are. They are amazingly fun, if I do say so myself. And even though I joke with Amanda that she doesn't love doing unit studies, her kiddo loves them. So
Yeah, I mean, we don't like unit studies as our core educational thing. It doesn't work for us. And my kiddo agrees with that, right? When like it's fun because we love to learn all of the things. But he's definitely my personality with like, oh, I want to do it and I want to learn it and go all in. So we 100% do unit studies. It's just fun. Like, let's dig into this random
yeah,
thing that we haven't thought about, kind of fun, not our main curriculum.
yeah, exactly. They are a great option depending on how you want to use them. But yeah, they can fit in just about anywhere, which is pretty cool.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Well, we hope you've taken something amazing from today's episode. We would love to hear your questions, thoughts, comments in the comments below. So feel free. But in the meantime, we shall leave you with a mantra for the end of this episode, which is every homeschool looks different because every family is different. Follow the plan that works for your crew and forget the rest.
Easier said than done, but let's work towards it.
Exactly. Solid advice.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thanks for tuning in. We hope you have a great rest of your day and happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.